Refactoring a component is one of the better ways that you can do to actually become a better developer, because you're taking something that works, that is fully functional, but you're making it better, you're making it more efficient. And in this video, that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to be doing it with design patterns. Now, before we get to that, there's actually two things that I want to mention, and the first one is that if you want to learn how to build a big and complex project with React as a total beginner with no prior experience needed, honestly, check out Project React in the description. It has everything that you need. You will not regret it. And the second thing is, I've actually launched a newsletter that is all about React. It's called Import React, and it has tutorials, tips and tricks, news, and really cool stuff that I find on React delivered to your inbox every single week. If you're interested, it's also going to be linked in the description. Now, let's get into the video and let's refactor a React component. All right, cool. So this is the component that we're going to be working with for this video. So this is a form component, and based on the schema over here, this is essentially creating a project, right? So we have the form schema over here at the top. This is created using Zot. We're using z.object over here, and we have all of the properties related to this form schema. One very important thing to note is that this also has something interesting. It has project tasks, which are different than a project. It's going to be an array of tasks that we're going to have to add and manage inside of this form. Then scrolling down over here, we have one piece of state to actually handle all of the tasks, this array of tasks that we're going to be adding to the form. Then we have all of the code using useForm from React Hook Form that is setting up everything that we need for the form. If you're unfamiliar with this, I have a whole tutorial video on React Hook Form that you can go and watch to get yourself up to speed. Then we have the onSubmit function, which literally does nothing besides await for 1 second and then console log the data. That's totally fine. Then we have this useEffect over here, which listens to the onKey down event of the enter key. So whenever the enter key is being pressed, and then we'll just submit the form. We'll call the handle submit function and submit the form. This is something that you typically see in a lot of forms in React applications. And then we have all of this JSX over here, which is quite a lot, and we're going to have to refactor this to make it a little bit cleaner, which essentially has all of the UI for our actual form. This is what the form looks like. We have all of our fields over here. We can type into them. We can type into the description. We can click this button to add a task. We can put a name for the task. We can add a duration, and then we can press submit. It's going to wait 1 second. And then in our console, it is going to log form submitted and then our actual values. So there we go. That's what we're working with in this video. Now, before we actually start refactoring this component with design patterns, I just want to take a brief moment to talk about Brilliant, which is the sponsor of this week's video. So Brilliant, just like what we're doing in this video, is a place where you get to learn by doing. You have thousands of interactive lessons on various topics such as math, data analytics, AI, and of course, more importantly for us, programming. Brilliant has a learning platform that is designed to be uniquely effective. You have lessons on there that you solve using a hands-on approach that actually lets you play and get a feel for the different concepts, which actually has been proven to be a method 6 times more effective than watching traditional lecture videos. Plus, all of the content that you find on Brilliant is crafted by an award-winning team of researchers and professionals from places such as MIT, Microsoft, Google, and more. Brilliant helps you build your critical thinking skills through problem solving instead of memorizing. So while you're actually building real knowledge on specific topics, you're also learning how to become a better thinker. And Brilliant helps you do all of that with literally just a couple of minutes a day with fun lessons whenever you have the time. It's the opposite of mindless scrolling, and it actually built a great habit. They have some great courses on there, and one that I really like is Thinking in Code, which actually follows what we're doing in this video and teaches you solid foundations for computer science that will directly help you to become a better React developer. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/costs-and-solutions or click the link in the description. You're also going to get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you once again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video, and now let's start refactoring our component with design patterns. Alright, so the first thing that I want to do is I just want to take all of this code and put it in a separate component because it makes more sense. This is the app component, and the app component shouldn't have all of the code to be creating a project, right? And the simplest way for us to do that, because literally all of this code is belonging to that form, to the create project form, is to just take everything, come here on the sidebar, create a new folder, call it components. Inside of here, do create project form.tsx, and then literally paste everything and then just rename the component from app to create project form like this. And then inside of app, what we're going to do is we're just going to remove all of this JSX and just put our component directly. We're actually going to wrap it here in a div because you never know what you want to add in here, right? Other than this form, right? So we're going to do a div and then create project form, import the form directly. And then we can remove all of the code over here. delete all of this, everything related to the form, and probably most of our imports. And there we go. Now we have something that is a little bit more simpler. We've actually followed the first design pattern, which is the single responsibility principle. The app component, once again, shouldn't handle the functionality of creating a project. It should go in a separate component, and this component only has the responsibility of handling that form. Great. Now, the second thing that I want to do is I want to just start renaming some of these things to make them a little bit more explicit, a little bit more clear, because I don't like the fact that this is form schema. This is a little bit too generic. And even though this is only used in this file, I would prefer to have a more descriptive, a more explicit name. So I'm going to take the form schema over here, find all of the uses of it, and I'm going to change it to create project form schema. Like this, schema like this. Right now, it's a little bit more clear as to what this does. And if you can do this, which in this video, I'm going to assume that we can, because again, there's no real backend, I'm also going to remove all of these project over here, like project name, project description, because everything is related to our project. We don't have to be redundant over here. Again, this really will depend on your backend, how you're actually saving these things. But in our case, we can do it. So we can just come here, right, and remove project. Remove this, and then we just replace with the lowercase n, lowercase d, lowercase t. Again, you don't have to do this, but I like to do this. And with the same fashion, we're going to do the same thing for the task. We're going to remove here the redundant task like this, and just put name and then duration. And now it's a little bit more simpler and a little bit easier to work with. Then once we have this, we should actually come here to our actual components, and we have a bunch of errors. So everything that is project name should no longer be project name, but just name, right? So now that gets rid of that. Everything that is project description should be description. So that gets rid of that as well. And everything that is project tasks dot something should just be tasks like this, right? I think that's safe to rename everything. And then here, task name, we should put name. And then task duration, we should put duration like this. And let's see. So set task, this is giving me an error. What is the error? Did we mess something up? I don't think we did. Let's see. Tasks. Aha, we have tasks over here, and then we also have tasks over here, right? So we're going to do existing tasks like this, and then existing tasks like this. I am going a little bit faster in this video. I'm trying out a new style, and if you can't keep up, let me know in the comments and I will try to go slower next time. But I'm really trying to see if it makes sense for me to go faster, because I usually tend to spend a lot of time explaining things in my videos. Great. So now we did that. Now we can actually start refactoring some of this JSX over here and making things a little bit more clean. So the first thing that I want to do is I see that we have a lot of repeated code over here. So here in the JSX, we have a div over here. This is all related to one single input. If I go back to the application over here, this is the project name over here. That's one input. We have another input over here as well. And then we have another section for the tasks. All of the project name over here is in this component. This one has a label, as you can see over here, has the actual input, which is getting registered using the name, right? And then also has the errors for the input. And then we have the same thing over here again, but for the project description. And we also have something similar. We're also doing similar things with the inputs over here for each individual task. I think we can make this better and actually make this into a reusable component that we can just duplicate and use as many times as we want in this component. And that component is going to have the label, is going to have the input, and is also going to have the errors, and is going to be connected to React hook form. I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's come here to our components folder, and let's call this component, we're going to do text input.tsx like this. Then we're going to do rjsfcp, because we're going to want to have props in here. So we're going to do text input props. And here, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this code, this div over here, because we want the div inclusively, because it has some styles that we're going to use in the component. We're going to put them here in the return function of this component, right? So now we have the text input, we have all of the code that we previously had, although we have some errors that we're going to have to fix. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fix this register over here. This register comes directly from useForm over here. So we're using useForm. We're getting the register function, which will register any input to be directly connected with React hook form. So we need to handle that here, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Instead of passing register, we're actually going to pass another property from useForm that we're going to be able to use with register and also with other things. And that property is going to be control. So here, and besides register, you can also get control from React hook form, and we're going to pass this to our component. Then in the component, to actually get access to the control, we're going to have to put it here in the props. So we're going to do control, and that is going to be control, which we can import directly from React hook form. And this will accept, this is a generic type, this will need the actual values of our form. So what are the form values that we're going to need in this form? But because we're creating a reusable component that should not be specific to any single form values, we can't directly put the create project form values, right? Because we're going to be using this input on any form in our application. So the only thing that we can do here is put any, because we just want a control with any values. We're not really concerned with what the specific values are of the specific form that this input is currently being used on. And later in this video, you're going to see another example where we're actually using the control, but we're going to specify the actual form values, because in that case, it is going to make sense, right? So then you take the control over here, control, and we're going to pass it here. The beauty of control is that control has the register function. So we can do control.register, and then this is going to work. This is exactly the same functionality, but without using register directly. Great, so that's done. Now we can move on. The next thing that we want to do is actually remove this hard-coded name over here, because we want this to be dependent and be passed on from the parent, right? So this is also going to have to be another prop of our component. So we're going to do name, and this is going to be a string like this. We're going to come here, add the name over here, and then we're going to replace all of this name over here with the name like this. And now we're also going to want to do the same thing here with the errors. We also need access to the errors over here. Instead of passing errors.name and then errors.name.message, we're going to have to pass the actual name that is being passed from the parent. I know that currently this is exactly the same value. It's name and name, so don't get confused. This is only name because we initially had the name input field over here. If we had started with this description, this name over here would have been errors. I mean, you can actually see it here. It would be errors.description. So don't get confused. These are two different names. So instead of doing that, we're going to pass the name like this, right? This is coming from the parent, and we're going to have access to errors name like this. And we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to do errors.name like this. Right? We're going to pass a name from the parent. Whatever that name is, we're going to try to access the errors object, the key of that specific name. Now you can see here that this errors object is undefined. We actually need to have access to the errors object, which we get here from the form state of React hook form. So this errors over here is coming from the form state. From the use form hook, we also need to have access to that same form state to get access to the same errors object. We're going to do it, but not by using the use form hook. We're going to use another hook that we're going to be able to pass the control over here to get the access to the same form state. So that hook is going to be use controller. We're going to import this from React hook form. This one will accept the control and the name like this, both of which we have actually access in this component. And this can return to us some data. So we're going to do data over here. And this is going to be an object which will have form state, which will have errors like this. So there we go. With this custom hook over here, not custom, I mean custom hook from React hook form, we get access to the same form state, the same errors object, and then we're passing them over here. Perfect. You have this error over here. I'm not 100% sure as to why this happens. I just know that the fix is to put a question mark over here to string, and there we go, error solved. If anyone knows why this error happens and you have looked into it, leave me a comment. I would love to know. And the last thing that we need to do is actually deal with this label over here, because it's still saying project name. And what I want to do is I want to make this reusable enough where you don't actually have to pass a label if you don't need to, right? You can have an input with a label, and you can also have an input that doesn't need a label. So we're going to make the label optional. So we're going to do label question mark, and then we're going to put this as a string. Then we're going to pass the label over here like this. And then here we're just going to change so that if we have a label, we're going to do label and pass the same code as we had before, and then just replace the hard-coded project name over here with the label like this. And there we go. And there's one more thing that I just noticed, and this is important that I've noticed this. We also have this placeholder over here, which still says project name. Now, instead of also adding directly the placeholder prop over here, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to extend. So I'm going to do equals here. I'm going to extend the component props. I'm going to import this directly from React, and I'm going to pass it here input, and I'm going to pass all of these properties over here. So this text input props, I just took all of the component props that you would traditionally be able to pass to an input. So that's placeholder, that's name, that's all of the properties that you're used to, and I'm extending them. I'm doing that and all of these custom properties here. And then in my component, I'm just going to access all of these input props, and I'm going to do ... input props like this. And then over here, I'm going to replace the placeholder and I'm going to do ... input props like this to be able to have the parent just pass any prop that they want that is valid for an input. It's going to get passed directly here to this component, right? This is great because it makes this component highly reusable and highly customizable. And great, so with this, we have our text input component. It's fully functional. We can actually now come in here to the create project form and actually start using it, right? So instead of all of this code over here, we're just going to do text input, import this like this. We're going to pass it here the control. We're going to pass it here the label because we want to have an actual label. We're going to pass it here the name, which is our name property. And then we also want to pass it a placeholder. And you can see we have access to all of these properties. Those are our input props. That's because we used this component props over here, which has all of these props. All right, so we're going to do placeholder and we're going to pass project name just like we had before, right? So now we just put all of this code over here in one reusable component, which means that we don't have to repeat ourselves. Everything is based on this component. So then we can do exactly the same thing with this code over here. So let me just create like this. We're going to do text input like this, and let's see, Copilot will be able to figure it out. We're passing the same control, label, name is description, and then placeholder description. And there we go. We can remove this piece of code over here. And now we've made our component a little bit simpler by using custom components that we created. And the beauty of this is that now we have access to these components in this project and we can use them in any form that we want. We're then going to do the same thing here in our array of tasks, right? Because this also has some inputs over here. So we can just do the exact same thing, text input like this. We're going to pass it here the control. The name is going to be exactly the same. And then we're also going to put here a placeholder. Let's see, can Copilot? No, it can't. Task name. There we go. Task name like this. And we also want to pass this class name over here. Just because we have it here, we also want to pass it. And the beauty is that, again, this is going to be properly typed because we're extending all of the props that you can get from an input. There we go. We can get rid of this and we can do exactly the same thing with the description, the duration, sorry. So text input like this. Let's see, control, and then we're going to do name like this. And then it's going to be type, number, and then placeholder, duration like this. And then we also need a class name. So let's just do class name, and that is going to be with 50% like this. We can save this and then we can get rid of this input. And there we go. We've used this component in 4 different places and we've saved ourselves the fact of reusing and rewriting the same component multiple times, right? So this is great. And this is a great design pattern because again, this text input component is only responsible for the text input and it's all configured to be customizable, to work directly with React Hook form, and you can just plug and play it every place that you need. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we actually want to take all of this code that is related to adding a task to a project and put this in a separate component. The reason why we want to do this is because, again, this doesn't directly belong on an actual project. This is something that is separate that we add on a project. And whenever you have something that is separate, it's usually a better idea to make it into a separate component. But that separate component is only ever going to be used inside of this file, inside of this form. So it actually makes sense for us to define it in the same file. We're just going to create a new component, but we're going to put it in the same file. So I'm going to take all of this code over here, including the button, including the errors over here, and I'm just going to cut all of this and I'm going to create a new component and we're going to call this function create project form tasks. This is going to be a component and we're going to do return. And we're going to return exactly what we copied. There we go. Now, obviously, we have some errors over here that we have to fix, but that's easily fixable. We just need to have access to some of the properties that we have access in the main create component. So the first one is going to be this tasks over here, right? This comes from this state variable here at the top, tasks, which really it's no longer being used in this component. So we can just take it and we can place it directly in this component over here. And there we go. We have tasks. Now, what I want to do is I'm actually going to rename this to make it a little bit more clearer because tasks over here and then having it start as a number, right, doesn't really make sense, right? I would rather have number of tasks and then here set number of tasks, because now it's a little bit more clear that this is the number of tasks and we're using that to create an array and then to display and map over every single task that we have, right? The number that we have, right? So we're going to do here number of tasks. And I believe that is, well, we need to set this here, set number of tasks, and we're going to do number of tasks. And there we go. So we have one step further to actually making this component work. Then what we need to do is we need to also have access to this control property over here, which again is defined in this component. So we have to pass it here through props, right? That's going to be simple. We're not going to be using any hook or anything like that. We're just going to pass the control the same way that we passed it to our text input component. So here we're going to have to define some props for our create project form tasks. So we're going to do type create project form tasks, like this, and props, and that is going to be control. We're going to import control from React hook form, and this time we're actually going to be passing these form values over here, right? And actually these should be create project form values to make it just a little bit more explicit, and also here as well, create project form values. There we go. We're going to be passing these create project form values to this control, because remember, this component is only ever going to be used within the create project form. It's not reusable, it's not generic, so we don't have to pass any here like we did in our text input. In our case, it actually makes sense to do create project form values like this, right? So we're only doing this here, and this is actually the better way to do it, because now you actually have proper type safety in this component with the control. We're only able to do this because this component is only ever going to be used within this create project form component, whereas this text input component was generic, so we cannot know in here what form values we're going to have access to, right? So that's a very important distinction to make, and again, in here it makes sense. So now with this, we actually can define the props over here. We can do control, and now we have access to the control directly inside of this component. That's great. We're one step closer. Then we also need to get access to this get values over here, and then set value, right? Which come again from React hook form. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're not going to be using any hooks. We're just going to keep things simple. We're just going to pass those as props to our actual component. So we're going to come here and we're going to do get values, and that is going to be use form get values, and we're going to pass it here as well, create project form values, right? We're passing the type as well. These are all types that are coming directly from React hook form, and you can just use them, pass them your form values, and it's going to work. And we're going to do the same thing with set value over here, and that is going to be use form set value, and that should be use form like this. So use form set value, import it from React hook form, and pass the same properties over here. Great. Now we have access to get values and then set value, and we're one step closer. Now we cleared all of these errors and we're fine. This works. And then to get access to this errors object over here, we're going to do the exact same thing as we did with our text input component. It's pretty simple. We just take this use controller hook because we have access to it. We can put it here inside of this component, use controller. We can import it from React hook form. And then instead of name here, we're going to pass name, and that's going to be tasks, right? Because we know that we're inside of the tasks over here. So we can explicitly pass it here. Again, this is not a generic component, so we're safe to actually specify what name, what properly we're actually using. And that's it, right? Now we have our errors. Now we have this component. This component is fully functional, and we can come in here and actually just use it. So we can do here, create project form tasks, and we can pass all of our properties, and there we go, right? Our form is a lot less complicated, a lot more simple, and we're using custom components to make things a little bit cleaner, to make things a little bit easier to understand. And finally, the last thing that we want to tackle is this use effect over here for handling the key down press. And this is a great candidate of creating a custom hook, because chances are in our project, we're going to want to have extra functionality that handles some sort of key down event. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the enter key, and it doesn't necessarily have to submit the form. We can create this into a custom hook, make this reusable, make this handle any sort of key, and call any sort of function, right? So let's do that. So let's come here to our project. Let's make a new folder. We're going to call this one hooks like this, and we're going to create a new file inside. We're going to do use key down.ts, right? Here we're going to do export function use key down. And this is a function that we're going to literally take all of the code, all of this use effect over here. We're just going to take this code and we're going to put it directly in here and see what we need to change to actually make this reusable. So first we're going to import use effect from React. And then what we need here is we actually need to check for a key, right? So we don't want to hard code the enter key. And then we need to have a function over here to actually call, right? So that's actually pretty simple. So what we can do is we can define some props over here. So we can do key, and that is going to be equal to keyboard event. This comes directly from JavaScript, from TypeScript. You don't have to do anything. We're going to pass in here the key, right? So this is going to be the actual event.key, right? This is a keyboard event. So we're accessing event.key. We're going to have this be a parameter of this function so that it can get passed whenever it's used. used. And then we're also going to do fn, and that is going to be a function that will return void, right? Because we don't need anything else, right? So now in here, instead of event.key equals enter, we're going to do event.key equals key, right, from the parent. And then instead of submitting the form, we're going to do fn like this and just call the function without any arguments. That's great. And our component, our custom hook rather, is now super reusable and would handle any sort of key press. And then there's one more thing. Because we're using a use effect over here, we're probably going to want to allow passing some dependencies to this array over here in case you have some dependencies that this function depends on and you want to change the use effect. You want to rerun and recreate the listener every time that the dependencies actually change. So what we can do is we can do here deps, and we can put here any and then give this an array and have this be defaulted to an empty array, right? So this is going to be the dependencies. The parent is going to be able to pass these dependencies, and we're just going to pass them here to the effect, deps like this. And now the parent is going to be able to completely control this use effect, this event listener, and control when it fires, when it changes, and how it actually behaves. And that's it. With this, we have a custom hook. We can come back here to our component and we can do exactly the same functionality as we have here. We can just do use key down, import this from hooks. We're going to pass here enter, right, which is the same key that we had. And then as our callback over here, we're going to pass a function that will just call handle submit, and then on submit, and we're going to call this function like this. And I believe this shouldn't be like this. There we go. It should be like this. There we go, right? So we're having the same functionality. Line 44 over here is exactly equivalent to this use effect, but we're using a custom hook, right? And again, this has the benefit that this is now reusable across our entire project. So we can remove all of this code, right? And then we can start cleaning up because we have some unused things because of our refactoring. So if I scroll up here, we're no longer using the register. We're no longer using the errors over here. We probably have some imports like the use effect over here that we're no longer using. And I think we're good. We have a custom component called the create project form component. We define the form schema. Everything is properly named. Everything is clear. We have all of our code here for React hook form. We have the handle submit function, which functions again the same way. We didn't do anything to it. We have the same functionality of the key down just now in a custom hook. And then we have the code for our form that makes use of custom text input components, the custom create project form task components. We're passing everything that these components actually need to work. And then we have the create project form task component over here, which has all of the same logic that we had before. This is now a lot better than what we had before. And this is functionally equivalent. There's no new functionality in here that we had that we didn't have before. We just did the same thing, but a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, and following design patterns. And now just to prove to you that this code works exactly in the same way as it did in the beginning of this video, this application now is running the refactored code. We can come in here, type anything in the project name, type anything in the description. We can add a task over here. Our stylings actually broke, and I've had this before. The solution is to remove the width 50% here. I'm not sure why here we have to remove it, but in the beginning we didn't. But doing that, it actually, that's not right. Instead of 50, it should actually be full like this, right? There we go, with 100%. I'm not sure why that happens. If you know, again, leave a comment down below. But we can add a task name, we can put a duration, and then we can submit our form. We have the same functionality. If I open up the console over here, our form is submitted with the same object. This component, our code works exactly as we had it before, but it's now clean, it's now refactored, and it is following design patterns. So there you go, guys. I highly encourage you that you check out this code. There's going to be a link to the repository in the description. Really focus on what we've done here, what we've refactored, why we've done it this way, and how this code compares to the previous code, because in my opinion, this is a lot better. And once again, it is following design patterns. If you do this, if you spend the time, and if you truly understand this, I promise you, you're going to be a much better React developer. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos just like this one, make sure to leave this video a big thumbs up. You can also click here to subscribe, or you can click here to watch a different video of mine that YouTube seems to think that you're really going to enjoy. And with that being said, my name has been Darius Kozden. This is Kozden Solutions. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you once again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.